When I first arrived in Russia in 2001, a loaf of bread cost about 10 rubles. Now, well, let's just say that things have changed. Hi, I'm Mark from An American in Russia. Over the last 24 years, I've watched Russia change in ways I couldn't have imagined, especially when it comes to money and prices. Today, I'll take you back to what it cost to live here when I first arrived, how it changed, and what it all looks like today. When I got here in 2001, grocery shopping was a very different experience. Large modern supermarkets? Rare. Most people shopped at open-air markets, and they often shopped several times a week, not just once. It was a constant process. I still remember my first trip to one of these markets. Fresh produce laid out on tables, sellers calling out prices, bargaining back and forth. You didn't just shop, you negotiated. Let me interject here. I didn't just shop, I negotiated. Most people never did. And it wasn't just food. It was clothing, household items, tools. Everything you needed could be found in these sprawling markets. Now, here's a quick snapshot of 2001 food prices. Now, while you're checking that out, let me just tell a quick joke. Okay, a construction worker cuts off his ear with a saw. He yells down to a man, "Do you see my ear down there?" A guy finds an ear, and he asks, "Is this it?" "No," the worker says, "mine had a pencil behind it." Okay, I've shown you some prices, but what were people earning then? Here's a snapshot of average monthly salaries for common jobs in Russia. You can just pause it and look. I'll continue on. For context, the exchange rate back then was about 28 rubles to the dollar. So those ruble salaries might seem tiny now, but adjusted, they'd feel about 3 times higher. It's interesting. While most food was cheaper than in the U.S., it wasn't as cheap as you might expect. I mean, maybe 25% less. But some things, like chicken, were actually more expensive here than back home in the USA. And imported goods, forget it. Anything imported was priced out of reach for most people. I mean, electronics, good clothing, brands, even things like peanut butter, my favorite, all very hard to find and very expensive. Over the years, salaries grew and living standards rose. Construction boomed. City skylines were filled with cranes. New supermarkets popped up everywhere. I remember the first time I walked into a large modern grocery store here. It was just clean, bright, with a huge selection. It felt like a different country. But people were proud at the direction their country was taking. But there's another side to the story. The ruble didn't hold its value. It dropped hard. 3 times since I've been here, it dropped really hard. First time was 2008, which was really the global financial crisis. Then again, in 2014, you can see it on the chart here, the big drops. In 2014, due to sanctions over Ukraine and Crimea. And then in 2022, sanctions after the special military operation. Each of these times, the ruble's value fell sharply and prices shot up. These crises taught me, and as most Russians already knew, not to trust holding piles of cash. Instead, people park the money in things, furniture maybe, cars, but especially real estate. I learned this too, twice. In 2008 and 2014, I managed to sell our apartment and upgrade right before currency crashes. Believe me, holding millions of rubles between when you sell and when you buy your new one, that was nerve-wracking. It was like holding a hot potato, watching the value of that pile of cash shrinking right before your eyes. Another thing I noticed, Russians really don't save money the way Americans do. In the U.S., you're taught to build up a savings account. Here, people prefer to put their money into something tangible because history taught them that money in a bank can disappear fast. Poof, like smoke. Moral of this story is think ahead. In Russia, crises come often, but if you're prepared, you can actually come out ahead. Now to 2024. Food prices have gone up a lot. On average, food in Russia today is still about 25% cheaper than in the U.S. Now, since 2001, between 2001 and 2024, salaries have increased by an average of about 500%, and so have food prices. In other words, people's buying power stayed fairly even for a while, but inflation caught up. So we see these huge food prices, but there's also corresponding salary increases. But life is still affordable. Healthcare, education, transportation, these are much less expensive here compared to the U.S. The standard of living here has definitely improved. Cities are cleaner. Public spaces are better maintained. There are more parks, better public transport. In the schools, new schools built, everything very nice. Now, mortgage rates, well, they're sky high, over 25%. But construction cranes are still busy throughout the city. People are still buying. Russians are still parking their money where they can. Now, I'm no longer in the market for an apartment. These days, maybe a new couch is more my speed. Prices have changed, currencies have fallen and risen, but after 24 years, Russia is still my home. If you've ever moved somewhere and watched prices change radically around you, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, Paka.